There's been a lot of talk recently about the inability to actually get a $10,000 or $15,000 house and how much land costs. And some people think that it's very expensive. Some people are hoping that it's quite cheap, and everyone has a very different opinion. And of course, knowing exactly what things cost is super difficult. And people say to me, well, if you would show us actual things, we would know more. And I keep telling people that's extremely hard to do, but when we can, we do. And today we have an opportunity to show you a lot that is available. We'll tell you what they're asking, what it has been viewed as, and give you some ideas about it and show you where it is so you can make some informed decisions. Not that this is a place anyone will be interested in, but we want to show where it is possible to have a $15,000 house, we think, right off of the beach in a prime beach location. So I think this is going to be interesting. Even if this is not the kind of place that most people are going to be interested in, it's important to understand what a $15,000 lot is going to look like. So let's get to that right after the bump. All right, I'm Scott Allen Miller, and this is my life living in León, Nicaragua. We're here in Las Peñitas, one of the most desirable beach communities in Nicaragua, and we're in the barrio, but we're really close to the water. So I want to show where we are here. Now, this is not the most exciting of locations, but just about 100 meters down here is the ocean front. We are not in a spot where we can see the ocean exactly here, but it's right there, and the only building between us and there is this one, and then there is a university building at the end of the road, which just sits right on the beach, because that's where they do some maritime research. This is the shrimp farm. So this is just a manufacturing facility, an agricultural facility producing food for export. Now we have some trash on the ground here, but just behind me is the baseball diamond, which is just an open field. Here in Las Peñitas, there is a beautiful new playground that we probably can't see, that's located just back here, and we are next to the church here. So this is on the edge of the main barrio, and it is a relatively quiet area. There's not very much traffic, but the road going up to León is just up here a couple blocks, so you're really easy to get in and out. And I want to show you what is available here. Now, this is a tiny lot. Remember, we're talking about places where the total cost of construction and the lot and everything could potentially get you a $15,000 house. And people said, well, could you do that on the beach? And the answer is generally no. However, and sorry for the very high wind today, we are into the windy season, so I'm going to be saying that a lot for the next few months. But this lot, while incredibly small, that's kind of the point, right? People need to understand two things. Those who think it's impossible to get a $15,000 house, we want to show that it is possible. And for those who are excited about it, we want to show why going to the cheapest possible thing you could possibly do is probably not something to be excited about unless you're just really desperate for a house and, okay, finally you're able to live in this, solves your problems. Then, okay, yeah, it's going to be exciting. But it's important to really understand this. So I'm actually looking at the lot right here. And before you jump to, that's a big place over there. No, it's the tiny lot right in front of it. We're going to turn the camera around and really go see it in just a second. But we want to show you just a bit of where we are. This is the church just behind me, and this is the building you see here is the Centro de Salud. It's the clinic for the barrio here. It's not very busy. It's a tiny barrio with a tiny clinic. I have no idea when they're open. We're only 15 minutes away from the Sutiaba Hospital, and there's a doctor with a private clinic just around the corner somewhere. So this gets very little traffic, but when you need it, you need it. But I'm gonna let's start right away. We're gonna turn the camera around and show you this lot, talk about some numbers, real world numbers, and let you go from there. And I'm going to show you some ideas of how you could put a small house on here, and then you can kind of understand what we're talking about. Okay, guys, let's reorient again. This is the fence. This is the baseball diamond. Beach is right down there. This is the shrimp farm. This is not the property, and this is. So let's walk right over and get a nice close look at this. So this is an absolutely tiny lot. So some places we're getting lots that are very low value. This is a relatively high value location within reason, because we're located 100 meters from the water. So that is a big deal. You could easily walk to the water in minutes from here. So that's great. But this is a very, very shallow lot, but it is big enough for a structure. Remember, you can build pretty much to the edge should you want to. And we'll walk along it here. So it's long and narrow. Well, it's narrow. I don't know, long is quite the way to put it, but it is a lot longer than it is narrow. But it is not large no matter how you slice or dice it. Now, the fence it's up against is old, but that would be your back wall. And then you probably can't build past about this point, and definitely the sign would have to stay. But this is important. This is a barrio house, but you have a very quiet little dirt road. That's a dead end right there, so nothing's going to happen there. You got some nice big trees. Of course, you'd have to cut these down over here. You have the center of health right behind you, which gives you a guaranteed really safe side right there. You have the barrio here, which is relatively quiet, and then you have another road, and both this road right here, this is the newly paved road that goes out to the Ponaloya road there, and it's got speed bumps, so you're not going to get fast traffic. And this dirt road actually goes out to the same road. The Ponaloya road goes along the back of the village there on a diagonal. So we're going to walk across this again, but let's show you. So this is long and narrow, and I'm going to walk up and show you the neighbor's place so we can get some perspective. Now you'd want to build basically all the way back against that fence no matter what. Now this building next door, notice it goes back a little bit, but they didn't build very far behind the back of this lot. So you'd have to really carefully build quite to the back. But you can see this is big enough for this store. Now this used to be the pharmacy here in the barrio, but it's no longer open. And in theory, you could buy this too. It's probably for sale. It's been closed for as long as we've known. And it's a tiny spot, much smaller than the one we're talking about, but it's a little bit deeper. But notice they didn't come out to the front. They didn't go to their sides. They left lots of room. They just built a really small place. And even that, you can tell, is large enough to live in. I'm not saying you would want to, but it's large enough to live in. And they put a yard around it with trees and everything and a fence. So what could you do on this lot? If you were to get this lot, you could do a couple things, but the most important, before we get started on what you could do, what you can't do is fill the entire lot with a house. And you say, why? If it's my lot, I must be able to. Well, legally, sure. But the issue is, this is a barrio out by the beach. There is no municipal sewage here. So you don't have the opportunity to work without having your own septic system. So that's something you're going to have to put in, and you're going to have to allow space for that. So that's a big deal that you're gonna have to accommodate that. So basically you have two really reasonable choices. Of course, you could do something really eclectic and build some really bizarre structure here and work around the problem that way. That's absolutely possible, but far more likely what you're going to do, because remember, we're talking about this in a very low cost way. We're not talking about, no, this is an interesting, I would not have expected foreigners in a Nissan to be driving down this dirt road in the barrio. That was really weird. I think they're lost. They had a very I'm lost look about them. Okay, so presumably you're because we're talking about a total budget of $15,000, what you're probably going to do is either build a house that takes up this corner here and uses, let's say, maybe 2/3 to 3/4 of the space, and then leaves a space here to put in a garden, and in the, under the garden you'll hide a septic tank, and then you're fine. You can leave one of the trees there, or you could do the opposite, put the house here, because the tree here is not very pretty, and then keep these trees down here, maybe build the house all the way up to the front of this tree, and then make that a garden with two nice big trees in it. I believe that might be a mango tree, I'm not sure. And then you have a space for a garden. You could put a fence around the whole thing. You could put in a really attractive fence, make it an absolutely tiny place. Remember, we're talking about $15,000 for a place to live. This is going to be tiny, right? We have to be cutting corners, but you could, in theory, build a 2-story building here. Now it's going to be really small, right? When we're talking about $15,000 total cost, when we're talking $16,000, we've used examples in super low cost areas with very small lots where you're able to have 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and it's a very basic living. When we get below that, we're assuming we're going to 1 bedroom, 1 bath, or more likely what we call a studio house. That's a house built like a studio apartment where you don't have a bedroom as a separate room, you just have a bathroom as a separate room, and then you have the rest of your living space is just open. Right? That's what really low cost houses are like. And the ones we know that are built under 15,000 new by foreigners, that is what we have experienced. And I know multiple people here on this beach who have done that in that price range, and that's how they like to live. So this is a very realistic thing that Americans and Canadians that I know currently live in today. So that is absolutely an option when you're in that budget range. That is what you're talking about. There's plenty of space for that here. Now, it would be small. But if you go up to that tree, you actually have room for a very large bathroom, a tiny little kitchenette, and a big living room and bedroom area. If you were to add a spiral staircase or an outdoor staircase or even an indoor staircase, you could put a second story up here. You can imagine it up there in the air. I don't know why I'm showing you the air, as if you're going to see something. And you know what the air looks like. And you could have a bedroom up above, a closet. Like you could make this into, now that would probably get above $15,000. If you're doing the total cost of $15,000, now we're going to talk about the lot cost in a second. Then you're going to be doing just a single story, extremely basic. But if you wanted to get this lot and do something a little bit more with it, it is possible to spend $20,000, $25,000 and get to a much larger space and be very close to things. Now remember, you also have people who sell vegetables and fruit and bread and basics very close. You do have a couple pulperias right down there, so you can do some shopping. And then you're really close to all the restaurants are just down there to the left. So you have access to a lot of things here, and you're close enough that you can get delivery here under the right circumstances. So there is a bit of good living to be done here. Personally, I think I would put the house over here and leave this as the garden, just based on the way that the trees are and such. Now, of course, I would also, if you have the money, consider buying the place next door and making the whole thing larger and having the ability to do a lot more with it. Okay, now we're across the street again, so you get a wide view of the lot. We'll wait for the traffic to go by. And so the question is, how much is this lot going to cost you? Because obviously the lot is going to be a large portion of your cost of building a house. Now keep in mind, you're in the barrio, so you have access to things, and you're 100 meters from the water. That car where it just turned at the end of the road is directly on the beach road. There's nothing between here and the beach road, so you're able to get to the water in a 5-minute walk. That's worth something right there, right? And this is a safe location on the paved road. Now, there's nowhere to park a car. So if you're going to do this, you are not going to have a car. That is something you have to accept, or you're going to have to park it somewhere else. And you are going to have some amount of traffic here, but you're very high visibility, which adds to your safety, as well as being surrounded by the fence, right, which you'll repair. And that is all space that you could light up at night and have very, very safe. You could light this road here, be very, very safe. I don't know if there is a street light in this particular location, but I believe that is one right there. It's a little bit hard to tell, but I'm pretty sure this is a lit up corner at night. And this is worth noting. This is a 24/7 agricultural facility, so this has security and people working at all hours. So while that isn't going to necessarily do a lot to protect your house from someone just kind of casually breaking in, it certainly helps a lot from protecting you from any kind of violent crime in the area. So this area is quite a bit safer than a lot of places would be because of the lights and the visibility and the business next door. Now, when we were approached with this property, we were asked if we'd be willing to buy it at $5,000. Now, when we were told that, we had not seen it yet. So we were unaware of just how small it was. This is too small for any of our purposes for us, but I do think it has potential, and that's why I'm showing it to you, because I think it's interesting for a lot of reasons, mostly for information, right? As a discussion point, it's very interesting. Now, at $5,000, it is absolutely absurd. No one should spend $5,000 on a lot like this. However, how many people have told us that there's no such thing as a $5,000 lot anywhere near the beach? And clearly that is not true. That is the asking price before negotiation. Before we even saw the lot, we had talked them down to $4,000. So we know that you could have this lot today for $4,000. And I have no commission on this, but if anyone is actually interested in this, which I am not recommending, but if someone says, well, Scott, I really want to try to get that, then by all means, shoot me an email. Information is in the show notes, and I'll hook you up with someone who knows how to contact the property owner. And I guarantee if you have $4,000 cash, this lot would be yours today. And you can probably negotiate down from there. So just something to think about. If, you know, I would say that this lot is probably worth, in my opinion, really quickly, between $2,000 and $2,500. It's enough to build a ridiculously small house, but very little more. But you could put a small business here. But very much worth noting is that this was the local pharmacy. It has been closed for a long time. So that building, which is already bought and paid for, already built into a structure that works, was an operating business, had its licenses, went out of business because it wasn't worth staying open, and it has remained out of business. No one has acquired it. No one has inquired, as far as we know, about it. No one is trying to turn that back into a business. So if you were thinking you were going to put a business here, you might want to be really thinking about that, because logic says if the locals who already invested all the money can't make it work, a foreigner investing new money is going to be so much farther from making it work. So I do not recommend putting in a business here, or at least not a business, anything like what was here. And if you do want to have just a small store, consider buying this instead of this empty lot, because it already has a business, a building set up for a business of that nature. But if you are looking to build, so let's think about this. What if we got this number down? Well, let's just say we start at 4,000. Let's assume you can't get her to budge on the price whatsoever, and you're going to buy this place for 4,000. That leaves you a budget of $11,000 to build a house on top of the lot. Remember, you do have to dig a hole and put in septic. That's not free. And you will be able to live here for that price, right? So think about that today. That is something you could do. Can you build a small studio house that is safe and well built for $11,000? Absolutely you can, right? When we're talking about places in like Castle León, we're talking about a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, non-studio, fully built house by a third party where they're making profits, with land around the house that is a larger lot than this, easily pushing double the size, but not on the beach, of course. And that total cost is $16,000 with their profit built in. So if they can do that for $16,000, you can certainly do this, just the house portion here, for $11,000, no question. That'd be very doable. My friend who built his house for between $11,000 and $13,000, that included a lot many times the size of this, just as close to the beach here in the same community, and he built all of that for between $11,000 and $13,000 with the lot, with the fence, all this extra stuff. You don't need to do that much here. Of course, you could put in a fence, and a nice fence here would improve it quite a bit. But it's an important perspective to have. So now that you've seen this, you have some amount of an idea of what a really small house would be, what that means, what that entails, what a lot could be like. Now, many times we're talking about much bigger lots. This is a tiny lot, but because it's close to the beach, there's value. In most places, if you're out in the country, in a normal barrio, in a normal small village somewhere in the country, you could get a lot several times this size, maybe 4 to 8 times this size, for $1,000 to $3,000, maybe $4,000. And then you'd have a lot more space to put in a house with a garden or whatever space around it. So that's normally what we're thinking when we're saying you should look at a house in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. That's more of how you would do it. And of course, this would be a house that you would build. In many cases, you can buy a house that already exists, because there is a huge decrease in value of standing homes, so you can get a really good deal, and that's a way to get into a $15,000 house as well, someone who wants to sell their house that they don't need anymore. Now, I just want to show this little pharmacy. You can see how small this is, but I grew up in Western New York, and I had neighbors who grew up in houses not much bigger than this, and I mean it, very close to this size. My direct next door neighbor as a child, his house was probably twice the size of this, maybe 2.5 at most, and he didn't build it to live alone in. He built it for he and his wife. Now, is a really nice build quality on his house, but this one's concrete, right? So this is pretty good. You got bars on the windows. I'm not saying you want this to live in. I'm saying look at this structure. Now, imagine if this structure, which I'm guessing costs about $8,000 to $9,000 to build, maybe 10 at the most. And I'm trying to read what the sign in there, it's all faded. Imagine if we took that structure and lifted it up and dropped it right here. I think there's room to put 2 of them right in this area. So you could have a structure double the size of this one as a single story, and I believe you could construct all that for under $11,000, maybe $11,000 on the nose, and have a structure of that size. That's big enough to have a very nice bathroom, and enough to possibly have 2 other rooms, right? A living room or an entryway and a bedroom. It would be very small, or do like I said with a studio and have it all be just open, because you're not going to be entertaining guests in your house here, and you just want to have a place to come crash, and you'll have plenty of space. And then if you wanted to go to 2 stories, you'll be in really great shape. Now, while we're doing this, I know that the sun is shining. We're going to quickly walk towards the beach and show you what it's like out here, so that you actually have some idea. Now, a lot of trash right in this one particular spot, but this would take one good afternoon of work, and you could get this all cleaned up, and that would not be a problem. We're also going to show the baseball diamond, just so you understand where you're at. Notice there's no houses around. You got lots of air, lots of light. This is a beautiful spot. Easy to go for a walk, quiet little road. All along this fence on the left, we've got the shrimp factory, or fish factory. I'm not sure what all they make. They definitely do shrimp. All right, we got one more motorcycle. And We're just gonna walk over here. I know you're getting blown out by the sun quite a bit. So this is the sports field in the middle of Las Peñitas, which we have filmed in, but it has been years. You got people actively playing soccer over here. You've got the school right there. This is the new playground that went in last year. Quite a nice, large playground facility. Like, that's really cool. I hope you can see it on the video. And then all that's one of the roads. That's the road we showed you that you'd be living on one side, running along there. And we're gonna head back to the road and keep walking towards the water so we can show you how close it is. And as silly as this is, I really think this is a great exercise in understanding, one, lots and things here in Nicaragua are just going to be very different than you're used to in other countries. If you're coming from the United States, a lot that small, being able to build on a lot that small, doing a tiny house like that, that's out of the question. You can't do that. And we all know you can't do that. But coming here, living a simpler life with a tiny little lot and a tiny little house is absolutely doable. There's no reason that you wouldn't be able to do that. Now here, this is one of those lotifications we always warn about. Built many, many years ago, and nothing has ever gone into it. It's completely empty. And so anyone who ever would have purchased in there would have been screwed because the other buildings never came. You can see there's some abandoned, as far as we know, abandoned old buildings in there. And it does look like someone turned up the dirt recently. But all of this is just empty. Buenas. And then it's worth pointing out that this place on the right has been empty as long as we've lived here. It was a business, or supposed to be a business, like an outdoor bar long ago. A couple of years ago, they put up this sign saying that a Chinese restaurant was coming soon, but no work was ever done. The sign has now torn away, and clearly nothing's ever going in there. So people often get this feeling that there's all this opportunity in business. And it's important to remember that Nicaragua is still full of abandoned restaurants and abandoned developments and things that people say, well, if there's a thing, there's certainly people would pay and get access and get into business, and there's so much opportunity. And that is just, sometimes if you have just the right deal and you know exactly what you're doing and you're in the right spot, yes, that can be true. But the average business is still out of business. The average lot is still empty. The average, the opportunities are difficult. Now, this is worth noting. The last time I was here, I don't know how long that was, this wall is only a few months old. So in all my previous videos, if I ever showed the shrimp factory over here or walked this, because I used to do a lot of filming out here in 2021, for example, this was all wide open. This is part of the university complex. And so you used to be able to just walk to the water from there. Now, there is some access down there. Also worth noting, every business that I know of down there is for sale, and has been for sale since before we moved here. Now this is wide open to the beach. You can't actually see the water because I'm a little bit low, but that is the water right there. That's all the farther we are from the ocean. So you're getting the ocean breezes here. These are the houses on the ocean. You can see people up there who are playing in their yard. This is there's some public access to the water right down there. You got a whole bunch of little tiny restaurants and comedores along here. And some of those are actually open and in business. But that's what we wanted to show you. So it is super close to the water, right in town. And if you're just on a crazy budget, this could work for you. So I hope that gives you a really good breakdown of both perspectives. I want to bring everyone to the middle, right? Those who think it's so expensive to live here, wake up call. It is so cheap to live here. Those who think that businesses are just a shoo-in, just open a business and people will beat down your door. Clearly not the case. People won't sell the places because they can't get enough money. Or there's no buyers. There's so many failed businesses, so many lost opportunities, right? Bryce just said on the chat the other day, well, it seems like buying a hotel in Nicaragua is like a really solid business. Well, if you're really good at it, or you get really lucky, you're in just the right place, you know exactly what to do, you have the right connections to bring in guests, it might be. But for the average person who's already invested, who already has their money tied up in it, it's already lost, and they're struggling to find buyers to bail and get out of the business where they've been losing for a long time. So it's all about perspective. We're gonna spin you around here. And those who think that it's so cheap and are so excited about seeing places that are just a few $1,000s, it's important to understand what that really entails. Yes, they exist. Yes, you can do that, but they may not be what you're picturing, as so many people just imagine that they're going to be getting big houses, modern construction, all kinds of amenities for nothing, and that is not the case. If you're going to live super cheap, you're either going to live like a Nicaraguan on a Nicaraguan budget and style, or you're going to have to adapt to an American super cheap compromise, which many Americans do and many Canadians do, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can still go for a non-Nicaraguan style that's incredibly cheap, but you have to adapt to some kind of minimalistic, super basic, tiny home construction in order to pull that off, which is completely viable. For many people, sorry for the loud sound of the dryers there in the shrimp factory. For a lot of people, the size of homes and the things that they do in the United States are impractical. It just doesn't matter. They don't need that kind of stuff. This is a great way to live. Be much more basic. Build only exactly what you need. Live and live outside. Go do things. Don't spend time sitting in your house. I have friends who live like this and they never go in their house. It's just to sleep at night. It's just where they lock the door when they're not going to be home. The rest of the time they're living in their yard, or they're walking around town, or they're going off on adventures or whatever. They're not spending their money on a home that they don't want to sit in. They want to get out. Now, if you want to spend all your time at home, that's great. You probably want a different place. So it's all about figuring out, does this work for you, or how can you make it work for you? So I hope that this real world pricing example is useful and educational. Get down in those comments. Let me know what you think. Ask your questions. Say hello. Remember that you can send me an email. All the information to send in a video and all that stuff is in the show notes. It's fantastic when people do that. Remember, we have the GoFundMe for Marcela with her Hodgkin's lymphoma and all of her chemo treatments. All the information for everything is in the show notes. Thank you so much. Remember to share on social media. Tell friends or family about the show. Get someone watching, and I will see all of you from beautiful Las Peñitas tomorrow.